All right. Hey, hiring great people is hard. Keeping them is much harder, especially if you can't compete in benefits. Today's guest, Guillermo Triana, helps companies solve that exact challenge by giving growing businesses access to enterprise level HR and benefits infrastructure. Welcome to the show, Guillermo. How are you?
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, off camera, you shared you're from Miami. I love it. The 305, all the actions out there, man. Many people are flying in to create households and businesses and things out there in Florida. So you're right in the thick of it. Although you are a native, a born individual out there, so it's a cool experience to kind of meet with someone that has been building a business for a while, but also seeing the influx of so many new entrepreneurial opportunities and staying focused in the marketplace that you serve. So we usually like to start off our interviews with a little bit of the background. So Guillermo, I shared that obviously born and raised in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, but the ideation of PEO marketplace, were you an employee somewhere for a long time? Did you just jump right into entrepreneurship? What's kind of the background of your story?
Yeah, for those of you that don't know what PEO is, it actually stands for something. It's a professional employee organization. So has to do with HR outsourcing, payroll, benefits, right? I actually got my start in the industry working for ADP many years ago. I started with them. I was lucky enough to get a shot to kind of join the small business sales team over there in 2013, I believe, if my memory serves. So basically, straight out of college, I started working with ADP, and I went to college for business, right? And at the same time, I was working with businesses in kind of my day-to-day career, just helping them figure out and get organized from a people operations standpoint. And that's kind of how I got my start in the business.
And it's interesting, right? It's on the job training, and you're paid by, especially by a big company like ADP. I think a lot of people, in this entrepreneurial craziness the last 5, 10 years, especially since I started the podcast, a lot of people want to glorify, going right into it. It sounds like you took a really counted step, right? Like, and you learned under an organization that's been a powerhouse for a long time. So in that journey, did you find one or two mentors that kind of, brought you up with them and taught you the tips and the tricks of the business?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think without that, like having a mentor to kind of take you under their wing and kind of show you the ropes, it's really tough to grow and advance at that time in an organization as big as ADP, right? So I was very fortunate. My very first hiring manager was amazing. He showed me the ropes. He kind of took his time with me, right? Listen, when I first started ADP, I didn't know what payroll was, right? I just know, hey, payroll, that's how you get a check, that's how you get paid, right? I'm good. That's all I need to know, right? Back then, I was 22, 23, something like that. And my mentor kind of broke everything down step by step, not only from the actual like sales standpoint, right? How do you position the value? How do you talk to potential prospects? But also from an internal organizational standpoint, right? There's a lot of career paths, especially in a large company like ADP. And he just kind of really took his time to say, hey, what do you really like? What draws your attention? What are you passionate about? And, you know, definitely without him, I think, my career path would have been different. So yeah, mentors are definitely important.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you sharing that, and I guess what I would say is you were cultivating the entrepreneur spirit, right? Because you were owning your position, you were learning it, you were kind of getting deep into it, and the mentor certainly helped. So
Right.
let's get into PEO Marketplace and this company that you started. How many years into ADP, or even I don't know if you switched around, but was it that then you decided, what I'm doing, I can do on my own, which is always, a big deal for people that are winners. Typically, it's hard to keep talent unless you're paying them super well and it's a super comfortable environment because the winners usually leave, right? The top producers, they think to themselves, hey, I could do this on my own, especially in marketplace like that. So tell us a little bit about that story and then how you launched PEO Marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, my back then, my initial thought path was, hey, I'm gonna climb the ladder here at ADP. It was an amazing company, an amazing opportunity, and I'm good. And that was it. That was my thought path. Granted, as you grow and mature in your career and in life, different things happen. And that belief starts to shift a little bit. Um, so, you know, I took a long time to make the jump from, my 9 to 5, position into entrepreneurship. It wasn't an easy jump. However, I did know that I wanted to make the jump, but I needed to calculate the risk first, right? So I did that a number of ways. Number one, I spent many years learning the industry and the ins and outs during my time at ADP. So that helped me build up the confidence to be able to take the next step or the first step into entrepreneurship. And, just kind of, learning on the job as well. I kind of saw gaps in the market, just talking directly to the customers that, I was engaging with, obviously. And, you build a relationship with these customers and, you get to see the ins and outs of their business. And, I've had a lot of different conversations with a lot of different types of companies. And, slowly but surely, this idea of PEO marketplace started to form. And that's when I was like, hey, there might be something here. Let me take a little bit, deeper dive into it and see if this is valid. And, 3 years later it is.
Nate, Nate. So you mentioned 3 years. So you spent what, a good healthy 10 years or so with ADP?
Probably like 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And look, I mean, that's, Gulf Shore community, you're hearing about a story that, you learned under a pretty big corporation. He was lucky enough, Guillermo, to get a great mentor to teach him. But then he also took initiative, right? You took initiative to learn the industry, to kind of understand the background, the back office. What are some of the things that really made others successful as your peer group and stuff like that? So what were some of the things? Because I have a limited understanding. I've got a couple buddies in the space, but I'm limited in the understanding of kind of who backs PEO marketplace. I'm assuming it's insurance companies and these types of vendor relationships. Is that true?
Yeah. So as far as who backs the PEO marketplace, we're a bootstrap startup, right? So as far as like actual backing, we have none. We got it from the ground up, right? And that's on purpose, right? We could have taken the avenue of maybe, getting some backing, PE, VC money. But we thought initially, we wanted to prove to ourselves that we had a solid proof of concept before, potentially looking at, getting backing. I'm not sure if that was the right question or the right
No,
answer.
I was actually going to say I probably didn't ask it the right way. I meant backing more like providers, so I apologize. So, but it's good to hear too that you've bootstrapped it because I think a lot of CEOs, founders don't realize, right? There's a large portion of people that just take their own risk. They're not looking for investors, and if they do, you could dilute yourself pretty quickly. So you have to be careful when you bring on investor. I think the glory is that hey, oh, I brought in $20 million or $10 million or whatever it is, but you don't realize that you lose a ton of control. So if you can, I'm a commercial lender, so I do SBA lending and all these types of startup finance and these types of things and acquisition financing. So I always try to encourage. It depends on you and what your mindset is and how you want to grow. So thanks for sharing that, even though I said the
Yeah,
wrong question. So the
no
the
worries.
the providers, like how did you learn who the providers were for ADP? And where did you go into that? And how did you start to then transition those relationships because they knew you as an ADP sales guy or professional in there, and now they wanted to hear from you as a PEO marketplace founder.
Right. Yeah. So, during my time at ADP, I spent a long time there and I built a lot of great relationships. Relationships with customers, relationships with referral partners, right? So I kind of just organically and the way I was taught to do business by my mentor, taught to treat people right by my parents and my upbringing, it kind of just flourished organically, right? And when and that also helped me make the decision on, hey, should I take this risk into entrepreneurship, right? Forego a steady paycheck and just go into something that is unknown. That was part of kind of calculating the risk for me personally, jumping into the whole entrepreneur journey. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's not something that happens overnight. It was something that, just kind of, I guess, was part of my work ethic and how I treat people and how I work with people. And they just, I guess they kind of followed me when I said, hey, I want to do this. And they're like, hey, we'll support you, man. We love you. I know you work with ADP at the time and, but we do business with you. And that went a long way for me.
So I'll peel the onion a little bit because I feel like this is a great topic. So in that sense, you're inside the company. You've built these great relationships, not only clients but vendors and the insurance companies that probably back some of these things, or even the services and the people in the back office. So what I'm trying to get at is, how did you start to establish those back end services and vendors, right? And how did you peel back the onion? And then also, did you have a non-compete? All right. A lot of big companies, you don't realize as an employee that they make you sign some things in their employment agreement, or if they ever let you go as a severance, that there's like a 12-month period that you can't even talk to. You can't even like email or call anybody. So what was that transition like? And again, the vendors and the companies that you now deal with that service your clients in the PEO marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, being in the industry for as long as I've been, you kind of run into, other providers and other vendors, and you meet people, right? You kind of rub elbows with people at different networking events. Like, I would meet people from, competing companies, competing against ADP and, met, a ton of other people that were kind of proxy companies to what ADP does or did. And it's just, hey, let's exchange information. Let's kind of leave that communication bridge open, right? You never know, where you end up, or you never know when, one day you'll run into the same person again. So, just kind of doing that. And as I kind of, continue to grow this network, conversations come up like, hey, what is it that you guys do that's different? And you start to learn the different nuances in the space, right? From one company to another, from like ADP to another company like Paychex or TriNet. And you start to learn these things through your relationships with people, that goes far and above what you can learn just by a Google search. And that's kind of how I started to formulate everything and kind of put the puzzle together.
Okay. So you mentioned briefly in your conversation here, what made you different, right? So what were some of the things and how have you established PEO Marketplace in your brand as a difference maker? Is it in the back office, some of the fulfillment? Is it in the supply of kind of the marketing, the way that you go to market? Is it truly just you, the individual, Guillermo, and what you bring to the table as the founder? So what area has made you guys and then, implemented?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of everything. Kind of the back office operations. If you look at our industry right now, it's if you're a business and you're interested in PEO services, it's a little difficult to kind of cut through all the noise and get straight to, hey, is this option even worthwhile for me, right? Let's get some pricing, let's get some numbers, right? If I'm a CFO of a company or I'm the owner of the company, that's what I'm looking for, at least on the initial, before I go through an entire exercise with, the sales team at the PEO, or because obviously they want to share the value proposition, and the business owner, it's important for them to understand also the value proposition, what they're getting into. So, our space right now is very fragmented. There's not an easy way. There's no way you can find specific information on certain PEOs just through a Google search. It's very it's very generic information, and that's on purpose, right? Because what they want you to do is pick up the phone, call them, and then start a process with them. I saw an opportunity there where, hey, if we can aggregate, these different, PEO providers, show the relevant data, the need to know data that, these companies are looking for to even, to decide whether PEO is a fit for them or not. Let's give them access to that. Let's show them what that looks like so they can, at least on the initial, understand, hey, is this going to be a waste of time, or is this something that we definitely need? Because the PEO in and of itself it's a valuable service, right? It's a very valuable service, especially if you have less than 100 employees. Um, at that size, there's a lot of things that can cause you to play firefighter, right? When you're trying to grow a business, that kind of distracts you from doing what you're in business for, right? So that's kind of what PEO comes in there and they help with. The challenge is the procurement of the actual PEO solution. And that's what we're known for, is, speeding up that whole procurement process, and not just speeding up the procurement process, but honing in and, matching that business with the right fit PEO that's going to plug and play right into their operations, seamless, almost like becoming a partner, an HR partner in the business without, taking over any type of control or anything like that. So that's one side. And, obviously behind that is our people. Our people, we've got ex PEO folks on our team. That's what they know. That's what we know. And, we can speak the language and translate it from PEO to, a business owner and vice versa. So really helps the process overall.
Okay. So look, I'd love to go into maybe a little bit different of a question here, but a little bit deeper into what you're talking about, because I feel like our audience could really kind of start to taste what it is that you've been able to develop and start to understand. But let's go a little bit deeper. So give us an example of a recent client, right? You don't have to say the name, but the industry, what that looked like for their journey. How did you prep them to kind of come in to do business with your company? And then where'd you place some of their needs based on the infrastructure of their company?
Yeah, absolutely. Not too long ago, we had a construction company approach us with the issue that they were having some heartache and some service problems with their current PEO setup. I won't name any names, but and this is a very common scenario that we come across. And they said, "Hey, can you guys help us? We're in construction." We're really good at construction, but you know, we don't even know where to start in order to kind of do the whole evaluation. Our setup and our current PEO versus what a potential new PEO may look like for us. We don't really know where to start, right? And mind you, this construction company, they had roughly 100 employees, but their quote unquote HR was kind of a little fragmented because it was someone that wore the operational hat, but they were also kind of assigned all the HR administration tasks at the same time. So they were kind of juggling two different roles and trying their best to do all that. And obviously their current PEO was supposed to help with that, but they felt like, it was lacking service there. So that's when they approached us. So what we did with them is we ran them through, our standardized process with a PEO procurement. We intake the information that we need. We standardize it so all PEOs accept all of the documentation. So there's no nuances. Some PEOs like to ask for, different pieces of information. We've got that down to a science where, hey, it's one set of documents, all PEOs accept it. And then, we went out to market for them, right? We said, hey, we're going to be your experts. We're going to make sure that we find you something that fits like a glove. Okay. Give us a little bit of time so we can, go to the PEOs based on your criteria and, your specific industry needs and specific operational needs. And we already have data on which PEOs would be a fit, right? We did a lot of this homework up front already. So we did that. We used our technology to help us do that. And the results were we got back about four options for them that, on the initial were really strong options, right? Now, some customers might think, hey, why not more? Well, our job is not really to inundate you with, 100 different options, right, of PEOs because that's not productive. What we really do is our platform really focuses on the actually filtering of, the right partner or the right PEO provider for that specific business, right? So kind of playing like matchmaker. Um, and we on behalf of the client, we make sure that, whenever we gather quotes or proposals, we look for any potential rooms for negotiation, make sure that there's no, bloating in the pricing for the specific client. And we get to prove that when we compare their current setup, right? Their services, their terms, and their pricing versus the four or five different options that we bring to the table. And we say, hey, look, here's the difference in service, here's the difference in the terms, and here's the difference in the bottom line pricing, right? Including everything that the PEO offers. We line item everything. So, in very plain English, we spell everything out. So it's easy for that client or that customer to be able to compare everything apples to apples and make a smarter decision on, hey, which PEO is best fit. And from there, we always say, hey, you gotta, before you make a decision or sign anything, you gotta hear straight from the horse's mouth. Talk to the PEO, get to know their service team, see a demo of their platform. We help set all that up. And then now, your team internally can make a smart decision on which way you want to go. And that's kind of in a nutshell our process and our value prop and how we help our business clients.
Okay. No, I mean it seems like you've discovered right an area of truth, right? These businesses under 100 employees are busy, right? They're building their businesses, right? Most CEOs of companies, be it in service or products that they've developed, that's their passion. Like that's where they want to be. They didn't realize that also, hey, if you hire one, two, three, five, 10, 20, 100 employees, there's also another level of connection that you have to have and things that you have to provide, right? So
Yeah.
so neat. So it's really becoming right, almost I would say in an affectionate way, a consigliere, right, for these businesses, right, a broker of sorts, right. And I don't like necessarily always saying broker because I think that's the normal name out there, but really a partner for these businesses. So if PEO Marketplace is partnering with these companies like this construction company, what is the compensation model then? Are you guys then once you place them paid by the company, so then the actual customer is not ever paying you directly?
Correct. That's the way we set up our model, and that's on purpose, right? We want, our customers and our clients, we want to make it very easy to do business with us. And the way we do it is exactly that, right? We get compensated, whenever they choose or when ultimately they choose the PEO they feel best fits them, right? Our job is to find that right provider for them, right? We kind of screen the candidates and we say, hey, this is why we brought these specific candidates to the table. Here's a reasoning. Here's, XYZ reasoning. Um, we get that question a lot. It's like, okay, what's the cost to me? When we say, well, there's no cost to you, and they look at you like, well, what do you mean? Is this real? Is this a scam? Like, tell me more. We go, no, no, no. This is our model. We built it this way on purpose. We take a lot of risk up front for you because, there's nothing stopping you from walking away and saying, hey, midway through the process, we're gonna go a different direction. Obviously, that's a big waste of time for us. But on the flip side, when we engage and we, really start to work with a business, we can quickly tell when there is, when there's a real need and when there's just kind of exploratory thoughts on just looking at, hey, PEO, yes or no, maybe, right? We know which are those customers. And something that you said earlier, about focusing on the business. Whenever under 100 employees, whenever there's a business that's growing and scaling and they start to have employees, I always like to say, hey, like you're working in your primary business, Mr. Business Owner, Mr. CFO, but actually you are in two different businesses at the same time, right? So when you start to grow an employee count and head count, now you're in the business of employment, okay? And that is a whole nother ballpark that um, doesn't necessarily generate revenue for you directly, okay? But if you don't get it down packed and you don't get it right, it can cannibalize your focus and your efforts from your primary business, which is whatever industry you're in. So it's something that you need to make sure that you have buttoned up. And there's different ways to do it internally, kind of putting some technology in place, or an outsourcing option like a PEO, right? It's different workforce models for everybody.
It makes me think, I had my insurance licenses, life, health, all that type of stuff. And I remember there was a company called Crump in that space, and they would take the 100 insurance providers nationwide and Banner Life and AIG and all these companies, and you would bring them a prospective opportunity, right? A 46-year-old male, two kids, overweight by 20 pounds, blah, 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 put it into this marketplace. And they'd go find the best company that really would insure them for their life insurance, as an example, or health or whatever. So it reminds me of that. And it's really interesting that you chose that because you were a guy that literally did the work with the actual companies. And then you decided to build a marketplace that still represented the companies, but gave them the choice of like, hey, I've got an advocate for myself in PEO marketplace so that I don't have to do the work. Guillermo and his team is going to come back to me and go, "Hey, based on the what's good discovery call and the charts and things and all the information that you gathered, they went and got me someone." So that's an interesting model, right? Because a lot of the guys are not in that. So is there other competitors that have now decided, "Hey, I'm going to go compete against PO Marketplace and try to build that value proposition out there?"
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially within the past year, our industry has been changing rapidly, um, from from distribution standpoint, right? The way companies actually purchase PEO services is changing. My own prediction, I think that, our industry, the PEO industry, is kind of, shifting more towards kind of like the insurance agent and carrier kind of relationship, right? Where, you know, the agents are the ones that are bringing the distribution, the opportunity to the carriers, right? And the carriers are, providing the actual, policy or the actual solution, right? I think I think to a degree it's kind of shifting to that. But yeah, there's a lot of different competitors that are starting to, you know, give rise and kind of change the industry. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight because our industry, I'm not going to say it's a new industry. Um, and I'm not going to say it's an old industry, right? Compared to like, something like insurance, right? Insurance has been around for hundreds of years. But the PEO industry in itself, it's been around since probably like the 60s and 70s. Obviously I wasn't born at that time, but I learned this stuff. Um, and during since that time, like really the way you procure this solution hasn't really changed. And I think now, given everything that's going on with technology and AI and all that, um, it's finally giving the industry an opportunity to evolve. And I, for one, I'm glad that there are competitors that are popping up because it validates our vision, right, a little bit to an extent. Um, and then also it's gonna help some of the legacy providers in the industry, right, that has been around for many years. We're going to catch their attention and they're going to be like, okay, well, something is changing here because there's more and more of these, type of companies that are popping up, right? And, I think if we want to get the attention and really make strides and big changes in the industry, I don't think it's going to come from just one company. Like, I don't think it's going to come from like, only PEO marketplace. I think it's going to be kind of a collective effort, with everyone playing in the same field. So, we can make innovation and change for the better.
And you brought up AI, right? Obviously, it's a hot topic. I think from what I understand of your marketplace and your industry, the fulfillment is, hey, some sort of SOPs are put into place, some sort of, diagnostic checkpoints from an HR level, some sort of surveys are put into the company to really to evaluate, and then how do you get the employees to also, plug into the 401k, plug into the health insurance, plug into the those types of things. So, what's one way that AI, in your estimation, is helped even PO marketplace? Like, are you using it to, gather enough data that these relationships now are so established that you know exactly what industry would play with a certain PO, provider?
Yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes.
Okay.
So right now, our technology, our platform, we're using it ourselves internally. Whenever, a potential customer comes to us, we use it. In the very near future, we're going to release our technology, right? And you would probably think like, hey, why would you do that? Well, you know, I believe that if there's a business owner or there's a business out there that is truly interested in PEO services, we want to make that entire process for them as easy and as seamless as possible. And the way we do it is by, allowing them to leverage our technology that we use for PEO discovery, evaluations, and selection, right? Um, so to your point, we're using AI to help identify in the initial discovery, right, of the platform in a matter of seconds based on, the company's criteria on how big are you, employee headcount wise, what states do you operate in, what's your industry, right? What PEO features are you looking for? What insurance coverages that you need, right? Right now, we've aggregated enough data over many different PEOs that each of these PEOs that are part of our platform, we have 130 different data points on each PEO. Okay. And we've got about 100 of them right now in our platform. So if you can imagine, if a business were to kind of go the traditional route and just say, hey, I want to look at PEO solutions. Let me call this one at a time, call a few. They don't have enough time to sit there and go through everything. And to be honest, they're calling the PEOs that have the biggest marketing budget, right? There's 500 different PEOs out there. Many businesses don't even know that. They think there's maybe just a few, the big guys in the industry, right? Like your ADP, like your Paychecks, like your China. Those are the biggest ones, right? Some of the biggest ones. Um, but then what ends up happening is down the road, maybe 2, 3 years, right? The client has buyer's remorse. And they're like, man, initially this looked great. This sounded great. Feel like we did a good comparison, but to be honest, it's difficult because no two PEO proposals are the same. It's not apples to apples unless you know what to look for and you know what you're doing. Um, so that's why we built our technology for that exact purpose, to help you find the right PEO based on your exact needs, and then also finding that PEO, making sure that that PEO fits into you. And then when you're doing the evaluations, make sure it's apples to apples. We do the hard part of breaking down the proposals. All of them are different with the use of something like AI to make sure that, hey, I know exactly what I'm getting into. Everything is line item out, spelled out for me, so I can sit down with my CFO or I can sit down with my HR manager and go through this and make sure that, hey, if this is a path we do want to take, we know that we're going to have the confidence in picking the right PEO because of, what PEO marketplace has provided us.
Hmm. So in many senses, do you also do a yearly check-in or review? How do you stay in contact with your clients? Because, in your situation, right, I always think of it this way, you've been able to provide a service to these owners that simplified their life and got them to the right fulfillment. But then I'm always curious, how does a company like yours stay in touch? Is there a protocol that you do a yearly end review?
Mhm.
Can you switch them? They went to XYZ and then
Yep.
now you found like, hey, they didn't experience the right experience. You're an advocate for them. Can you place them with JML, right? Or whatever. So is that part of the process or is there commitments of, 2-year contracts, 3-year contracts, stuff like that?
Yeah, well, for on our end, we stick around even after the ink dries. Okay, and what do I mean by that? Um, every year, companies that are with a PEO, they go through an insurance renewal, whether it's on the health insurance renewal or the workers' comp insurance renewal, one or the other or both. Um, and what we do is we make sure that based on the use the usage, right? Um, that that PEO is still keeping their promises, right, to that client that we initially placed, right, or helped place with that provider. And we on the client side, we look at, their yearly contract renewal to make sure if there's to find any margin bloats, right, within the contract. And if there is, we help correct it. We talk to the PEO. We say, hey, listen, can you tell us why this is happening here? And there could be a number of reasons. Maybe the client grew, right? Right? If the client grew headcount, well, understandable, right? That's more workload and there's more risk that the PEO is assuming, and hence, they also have to, they have their own costs for services rendered, and we get that. But really, we're there as a liaison, as an advocate for that client. Um, we usually do it every 6 months, right? Biannually, we check in to make sure, hey, how's the relationship going? Are you happy? Yes or no? If not, then we have an opportunity to work together with the PEO to help correct any potential dissatisfactions with the service, right? If there are any. And that also, PEOs appreciate that because they're a partner in the business and obviously they want to retain the business, and they really value that in a partner like us. A lot of you know a lot of other competitors and other peers don't do that, right? for whatever reason. But, because of the relationship that we want to continue to have with our clients and the PEO, we feel like that's a necessary step.
All right. So, it's interesting, right? Obviously, I've learned even myself through this podcast of kind of what it truly meant to be able to build a marketplace in your industry. Because, like I said, I've had some buddies that are in the names that you talked about, ADP and Insperity and some of these other companies, but it's interesting because I feel like the business owners, the CEOs, founders of companies really need advocation, right? Need someone to be able to kind of work with them. So from a PO marketplace standpoint, I guess we'll end this segment here with, so then the business truly of monetization for you is creating a value that goes into the marketplace, picks the right people, implements it, has them fulfilled by the back office of that company. But then your true value stays in, hey, the checkup, the reevaluation of the marketplace. And then do these companies, as you, let's say, take them from ABC to JYX company, do they pay you again for that? Or is there like a clawback from a monetization standpoint for your marketplace from the providers, right? Not from the client.
Yeah, yeah. So, in the event that, everything is driven through the customer, right? So if the customer is dissatisfied with that provider after many attempts to kind of solve whatever the heartache is, they come back to us and they say, hey, we're looking for a different provider. Can you help us the same way you helped us initially, run through that entire process? And we do that. However, what I will say is that we've been around for about 3 years. I can count on one hand how many times we had to do that. And the reason
Mm,
being is because initially we do a pretty good job of making sure that, there's a fit between both parties, right? The business and the PEO.
yeah. Yeah, it's not like selling car insurance, let's say to State Farm, and then, their policy, they had an accident, they didn't have a good experience. But I guess maybe that's not that way. Like, meaning it's not just it sits there, it
It's
doesn't
not
get
transactional.
serviced, right? It's not
Yeah,
transact.
it's not
Interesting. Interesting.
transactional
Yeah.
because, I mean, you think about what the PEO does. The PEO touches every piece of your back office,
Yeah.
right? Every piece. So it's not as simple as, hey, yeah, let's get this policy, let's get it in place, and we're done. Although that's one component of the PEO service, right? It's just a small component.
Yeah.
You have to look at
Interesting.
everything. That's why I think there's a ripe opportunity here to help these businesses figure this out because now more than ever they need help with the business of employment, right? Um, and finding a way to do that as efficiently as possible, finding the right provider that can help them, we're that bridge. That's what we do.
I love it. Well, look, Guillermo, you've brought us through a journey here, right? From being at a top-notch company, learning the ins and outs, being a top producer, having a great mentor, to then having that entrepreneurial itch, right? And then seeing an opportunity to say, hey, all right, what if I could not only just represent ADP, but what if I represented all 500 of these to the marketplace, create PO marketplace, and then actually drive that through the relationships that you built with business owners. Man, what a great story you've been able to build and are building. So kudos to you. So, one of the ways that we end our CEO podcast here is CEO. So is client experience. And earlier in the podcast, you kind of shared a really unique journey of how your clients experience you guys. So I'll have you just wrap it up in 30 seconds from that value proposition mindset again. What does it look like to have a client experience with PEO Marketplace?
Like I said, we try to make doing business with us very, very easy. We're never pushing any one provider, right? We take our time to listen and figure out if PEO is the right fit for you as a business in the first place, right? We'll be the first ones to tell you. I mean, we've had to educate certain clients and tell them, hey, look, you may be better off doing it this way, and here's why. And it's you can never force fit a service like PEO because if you do, then that's when you have buyer's remorse. but yeah, we try to do the right thing by our clients, and also by our PEO partners as well, right? Because essentially we have two different client bases, right? So we want to make sure that we do right by both of them, and yeah, that's how we do things.
Awesome, brother. Well, E is for engagement. We didn't get a chance to totally chomp the bit on this one, but engaging, right? It's always interesting to hear people's perspectives because every time I ask this, it's always different for everybody. And the 3 plus 400 plus interviews I've had. So, how does Guillermo like individuals, companies, owners, PE providers, vendors, employees? What's the best way to engage with Guillermo and what do you enjoy? And that could be, retreats. It could be going out to a ball game, a baseball. It could be out to eat. Like, what's one of the best ways that people, could get a little secret of how to engage with Guillermo?
Yeah, I like fishing. I like going out. I'm in South Florida, so it's pretty easy to just get my fishing rod and drive 30 minutes out to the beach or to the pier, and it's relaxing for me. It's and I kind of equate it to you know business in general, right? You're fishing. You cast out a line. Maybe you have the right bait, maybe you don't, right? You're trying to hook that fish and to help feed yourself, feed the company, kind of equate it that way. And it's all about patience. It's all about, you know, um, using the right messaging or the right bait, right? And I kind of like to think of it that way. I'm also very active, like to play sports, baseball. My sons are in baseball, so we take time, we go to the park, and yeah, man, just I'm a normal human just like everybody else.
Well, hey, man, fishing is something that is particular to you, and like you just said, baseball with your kids, and I always try to say that question or ask the question because I feel like every human being, like you just said, yeah, is like everybody else, but also very unique. And I love food, right? Like I'm a sucker. If I go out to South Florida and you and I can get together, man, if we go to a great restaurant, a great Cuban food, great Italian food, great Persian food or whatever. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of where I love like
Yeah.
connecting with people. So that's my engagement. But awesome, awesome stuff. So you mentioned AI and how it's transitioning some of the things in your industry and you personally, the way that you've built PO Marketplace. But for CEO, operational excellence, what is 30, 60 seconds of what are the tools that you're using? Are you a Monday.com? Are you a HubSpot? Are you like, what is it that's made you guys really make sure that you're tight on your operations?
Yeah, I mean, I would say everything, the center and the heart of everything is our CRM. We use something called High Level. Not affiliated with them, not getting any kickback or anything, but it's helped us kind of organize everything. It's pretty robust for our use case. We use that, and we also use a couple other um, marketing tech stack, right, to help us just get the word out there, right, that we exist, right. First 4 hours of my day personally is I'm battling irrelevancy, right? Nobody knows you exist, right? So that's a battle every day. I mean, it's easy in our industry. Our industry is relatively niche, right? So you see a lot of the same people, especially on, LinkedIn and all that. But if you kind of pause and take a step back and say, wow, like the world is huge, right? And someone, across the country, they don't know you exist. That's a problem we're fighting, and that's a battle we have every day. So that's kind of what we do. I don't know if that was a little long-winded, but yeah, that's kind of our tech stack without giving away the secret sauce.
Sure, sure. No, I appreciate it to whatever level you want to share. I think Go High Level is a unique tool. A lot of people don't know that it's got complexity. It's got some different ways to use itself. So, and it's a kind of a one-stop shop in many ways. So I will say that you made me think of Grant Cardone when he talks about if they don't know you, they can't flow you, right? So, it's interesting, right? It's so true that every day you wake up in Go for SEO community, you have to wake up every day wanting to be out there in the marketplace, sharing what your value is, doing the things like this, a podcast. Guillermo and his team reached out to be on the podcast. I recently wrote a book called the 4A Formula, Untangle Any Challenge, and learn from guys like this. Like, think like a CEO, right? And there's a 4-step formula. Assess where you're at, take alignment in the values and the people that you're connected to, take accountability, and take massive action. And that's kind of the 4A formula. So, Guillermo, thank you so much for being a part of the Go for SEO channel. We really respect, the entrepreneurship and the paradigm shift that you created in your marketplace to do it from a marketplace standpoint, not just an individual company. So tell people how to get a hold of you. What's the best way to interact with PO Marketplace, website, LinkedIn, all that good stuff.
PEOmarketplace.com right here.
I love it. The placement of your branding is perfect. I don't know how you did it, but the way that you sit, the perfect marketplace. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So awesome. Go for SEO channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, we're growing. The last probably 2 to 3 weeks, we've grown 300 or 400% in our subscriber base. That means that you guys are enjoying these interviews. People like Guillermo sharing great value. I know the business space is not always the most entertaining and we're not flipping a cupcake in our face, right? And stuff like that, but it's awesome stuff. And this is real business, ways that you can really make money, really change your life and do some big things. So thanks for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel right now. So thanks, Guillermo. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.